whatever you end up doing, it's a two things. Make sure you're the best at it and make sure it's something that you love. That seems to be my strategy. Playing at both ends of the spectrum to learn about the other one, right? I would be a great hockey coach, don't you think?
Hi, guys. Welcome to our interview series, Football in the Trenches. Today, we have Marcus Walfridson with us. We're seeking to profile interesting personalities, and Marcus, no doubt, as you will certainly feel by the end of this podcast, is one of them. He's experienced football from possibly every single angle I can think of. He is somebody who thinks a lot, transmits his thoughts a lot, has contributed a lot to developing the work of others, and it's going to be an interesting discussion. As always, I have Jesse Edge here, our experienced content creator, and I have David Wernerson, my colleague, with us. And just like to remind everybody, we're sponsored by Game Insight, which is a new social media platform and career building education platform, which focuses on promoting communication and learning inside the game. You can visit gameinsight.sport for more information. So, Mr. Walfridson, please state your name, rank, and serial number for us.
I'm not answering those type of questions, man.
All right.
Nice. It's good to be here, guys. It's a great opportunity to talk with great people. Always fun. So there's a friend of mine, actually my business partner, he also always says that there's no such thing as a wasted meeting. And let's see if there's anything like a wasted podcast interview. I don't think so, but
Marcus, you've been a coaching evaluator. You've been a football innovator. You've been a content producer. You've been an author. You've been a men's coach. You've been a women's coach at high levels, Champions League quarterfinalist, thinker, catalyzer, club builder, scout, leadership trainer, academy head, sporting director, contract lawyer, headhunter. I mean, I don't think there's a single angle in the game you haven't tried to cover. I don't honestly know if there is a perspective that you haven't kind of tried to look through. I mean, I know you're still trying, but I mean, why the journey?
well, why are we alive? I think it boils down uh, to the search of my personal meaning. So, what do I want to do in life? Um, First of all, great book recommendation, Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. No, I think it boils down to one thing my father said, actually, one of the few things he said that was really helpful. Well, let's see if it was helpful. But he always said that, whatever you end up doing, it's a two things. Make sure you're the best at it and make sure it's something that you love. Because if it's something that you love, and I think many people have said this, I think, but if it's something that you love doing, you don't feel like you're working. And honestly, I don't feel like I'm working, and I don't ever want to feel like I'm working. So that's why I tend to do things that interest me, things that I find fun or interesting, challenging. And well, challenges are one of my favorite things. But I think that's the thing. It's a personal journey. You develop as you go. You learn stuff, and especially about yourself, and yeah, you move on, and things happen, right? I mean, how many times have you not been in situations and you reflected on things and you said, "Hey, at that time when I met that person, if I'd been late, or if I would have said no to that meeting, well, then I wouldn't have ended up getting that job, and I wouldn't have moved, and I wouldn't have met the love of my life, and I wouldn't have my kid." I mean, the margins are so slim. It's amazing and fascinating.
Yeah, and that's completely true. And to completely back that up as well, in another angle, I think if you don't love football and the profession and game that we're in, it's such a cutthroat industry, so that if you don't have the passion for the game, then, you're not going to last very long, basically.
No, I think it's a fascinating business, because obviously many businesses are like that, right? It's a cutthroat business in any business, probably. It's high competition levels, but in football, it's seems to be a little bit different. And to your point, Jesse, I think, if you are not in love with coaching, for example, if you're not in love with the daily grind of coaching, individually, collectively, doing those 12-hour, 14-hour days, 6 days a week, 11 months a year, if you're not in love with that, you shouldn't be coaching. So that's why I'm not coaching. um,
That.
but I'm in love with the game, but in a different way now.
Yeah, and then as well through continually and never-ending improvement as well, because the game catches up to you so quickly if you're in a stagnant position.
Yeah, I fully agree, and I think that's a life thing, right? If you're not continuously learning, if you're not challenging yourself and developing yourself, then why you're here? I mean, if you're not here to improve yourself and help others improve themselves, then I mean, you kind of just taking up space.
Completely agree. Completely agree. But we wanted to take you back a little bit into your past. We wanted to start with, tell us a little bit about your upbringing and which environment, area, family life.
Well, I grew up in the northern parts of Sweden, in the middle of the forest. Not many people around, a lot of trees, a lot of snow, cold. Single mom, tried her best, and at least she made me come out alive. So I'm glad for that. But I think that influenced a lot of my early start of my life. I'm kind of back close to where I grew up now. It's a totally different vibe this time because I've evolved. But the upbringing was relatively lonely as a single child with a single mom. Then I think because of that, I was drawn to team sports. So I participated. First of all, I think I participated every sport that was on offer in our small little town, except skiing, which is kind of ironic. Uh,
It's
but
impossible.
I did high jumping, running, like athletics, and I obviously played soccer, football, floorball, hockey. I even tried basketball. Played two games until I realized I sucked. So then I stopped playing. But yeah, so I was always drawn to team sports, probably because of that upbringing, so I'm very grateful for that. But always been fascinated about that kind of the team dynamic and the hierarchies within that and so forth. So yeah.
All right, and interesting. You talk a lot about like different team sports you've been a part of, and so I want to go back to like, how did your original playing career develop into, well, an innovator role in football?
Well, I think many times when people kind of ask me, hey, so what did you play? And I say, I didn't play. I stood there in goal. And I think I ended up being a goalkeeper because I wasn't a very good player. Because I remember when I was young, I alternated playing goalkeeper or striker. But as it comes kind of full circle eventually, that seems to be my strategy, playing at both ends of the spectrum to learn about the other one, right?
Yeah.
Because if you're a decent striker, then you learn stuff as a goalkeeper and the other way around. But yeah, I was a goalkeeper. Didn't really play seriously until I was around 20, which is kind of late. Obviously, played all my whole upbringing, but started really focusing on football when I was about 20, because our first team locally went up to the fourth division, and then it became a little bit more serious. And I moved down to my dad's in Uppsala. I think it was when I was around 22, and in the first friendly game with the new team, I broke my ankle a couple of minutes before halftime, and I told him to, hey, tape it up. I'm gonna play, but it's halftime, so go off, and it turned out to be broken. But that gave me 6 weeks in a cast and some couple of months, without playing, which brought time for reflection. And I decided then that I wanted to work within football because I really didn't have a career path. I didn't go to university. Not a big fan of studying at the time. did a lot of different work, so sales jobs in different kind of sectors. I was at the time I was actually a PE teacher, a temp, so I was like trying a lot of different things, and I sat there in my cast and I thought, what am I going to do with my life, right? And then I just thought back to, okay, so days when I'm sick, days when I'm feeling down, what do I always either watch or read about? And it turned out to be football. So I decided there and then that I wanted to work within the game. For me, then I thought that that meant being a coach. So then the plan became, hey, I'm going to play as long as possible at a high as possible level to learn as much as possible from other coaches. That was my strategy. And that brought me to Norway, playing semi-pro at the second level, or third tier actually, second division, and about to had a good season. Was about to go to the first division, and obviously my knee got torn in the second training session, so that didn't happen. And that gave me an excuse to quit playing and finally start coaching.
But who brought you into? Was it did you go into football yourself, or can you trace back your original contact with it to anybody that kind of?
I think it's like this. Yeah, when you grow up in a small rural kind of town, I think I mean, you're part of the football team because you're one of the kids that are there. So literally, the team is more or less your classmates. There's probably one or two who didn't play, but that's about it. And I think everyone played when we started out when you were like 6, 7 years old. I think every kid in my age played on the team. So I think that was kind of the road into it. So a socially semi-forced way.
Yeah.
But I think given my upbringing being relatively lonely, I think that was also why it was natural for me to seek the social companionship of being part of a team and finding kind of my own space, to be seen and to be heard a little bit more, I think.
Yeah, I mean, Jesse comes from a similar country in New Zealand, but I mean, I just want to illustrate here, knowing that part of Sweden. I mean, imagine a small town population, what, 2,000-3,000, where the next town is 100 kilometers away.
Less,
right?
half of that, maybe 1,000.
Yeah.
But then through saying that, do you think you gain something from being brought up in such a small community, or lost something compared to, say, a big city, for example, Stockholm or Gothenburg?
First of all, I'm very grateful that the way I was brought up and where I was brought up happened, because otherwise I wouldn't be here and who I am. So I'm always grateful for that. I do think it brought me things that are probably less common for children today, because being alone, you need to find ways to stay, I don't know, engaged, stay do stuff, right? And you're bored a lot, and you play with different things, and et cetera, et cetera. So I think it helped my creativity. It also helped my threshold for being lonely. So I'm comfortable being lonely. I need to be alone sometimes, to kind of re-energize and all that stuff. But it also, it gives me I have an ability to figure out things in maybe a little bit different way than others. So, and I think that is part of that is because of my upbringing, definitely.
And when did you realize that at a young age, or has that come quite recently? Were you very kind of aware of, how deeply you think about things, or did that come later on in life?
It's definitely something that's come later on in life. The benefit of being old or becoming old, but it's also, when I look back, I think it's always kind of been there, but it's been nagging me, and it's been those kind of reflections have popped up in the past, but then I think I've used different outlets, negative ones, to kind of bury them, or to deal with the dissonance. It was a kind of a cognitive dissonance, and I've dealt with that in negative ways in the past, tripping myself up, and making myself not succeed at certain things, and that's all being kind of been spun out of that dissonance that's been within me, and now it feels like I've finally realized some more stuff about myself. And I think, as you go and as you become older, you keep realizing stuff and learning things about yourself, and it's cool, scary, and interesting.
Nobody, I mean, the contact I've had with you, you're not a passive philosopher who sits there under a tree thinking about life. I mean, one of your adventures has taken you, for example, to a camp where you had to be silent for 10 days, and you're seeking insight, seeking knowledge. Could you give us a little bit of background about that experience?
Yeah, and it's a 10-day. I was on a 10-day Vipassana meditation camp twice. First time in 2017, and it was inspired by a good friend of mine, Magnus Persson, who coached in Malmö, now in Spain. And because he mentioned that he had been on a 10-day meditation camp, and the first time he was there, I think he left after 3 days, something, because it was so tough. And also another person that I worked with mentioned the same thing, that after tried it after 2 days, home crying basically. So me and my lust for challenges kind of that spurred me, and yeah, hey, if these guys couldn't do it the first time, I'm gonna definitely do it. So it was a challenge, but also I started meditating in 2015, and I'm not sure how I got to that, or what led me to it. I think it had something to do with me working 6.5 days a week, 12 hours a day for like 5 years, or maybe even 10 years actually. I think that kind of led me to the meditation. So I think it was a kind of like this feeling inside that, okay, you need to do something else than popping a beer or watching a movie or something else like that to relax. So yeah, the first inklings of meditation came in 2015. The meditation camp itself, 10 days, like you say, Tony, it was you're not allowed to talk to people, so that's one challenge. You're also not allowed to look people in the eye.
Oh, yeah.
And no physical contact with others or yourself. So you have 10 days on a vegan diet. In addition to that, you only have 2 meals a day, which was kind of tough the first time. Now it's no problem, because now it's 2 meals a day every day. But there was some interesting challenges, let's just say that. And it was very tough, but rewarding.
I think the vegan diet would get me at the end, but I still understand I mean, until you try it, it has to be a real challenge. I mean, 10 days, 10 days, right? But oof, we're social animals. We interact with our environment and people around us every day, right?
Yeah, and the worst case, or the worst thing, is that you are alone with yourself. So it's both the worst thing and the best thing. So in the beginning, and I said it's like the first camp in 2017 was the worst time of my life, and it was the best time of my life. So like I remember day 3 and 4, like horrible, felt horrible. I could really understand why people broke down and went home, and people did. Because it's, you sit there and you meditate, and it's like you're peeling an onion. Like for me, it was like peeling an onion. You went from like what happened yesterday, and I think I went through all my relationships with girlfriends. All my relationships with friends. You kind of slowly peeled everything back. At the end, it was like felt like this was this a waterfall that was just falling on me with negative stuff on one day. And then the day afterwards, it was the same feeling, but the opposite, only positive things. All of a sudden, I had all these positive memories from my childhood. I had this one experience, and I don't know, I'm gonna sound like a weirdo even saying this, but I had this one day there, I think it was day 8 or 9, and it felt like I could go to a certain date, like April 12, 1988, and I could like, I was there. I did this. I see myself and I see my friend, and I don't know, might have been just illusion or something because of the vegan diet, Tony. But
Yeah, what was in that vegan salad, mate?
A lot of mushrooms, or
Jesse's a vegan.
so, but it was a really really awesome thing. And one thing is just the level of challenge, right? So that type of challenge, staying just, I mean, today, just imagine staying without your cell phone for 10 days. That in itself will be a challenge for most people. And then staying alone for 10 days will also be a challenge, and take all distractions away. I mean, come on, you will see some really cool stuff happening to yourself.
And then what would you say was the biggest takeaway that you gained from doing that you brought back into the normal world,
And into
basically?
football. What,
Yeah, or into football, yeah.
and did you at any point link it to football?
I think you can definitely, you can link it to every part of life, because what comes out of it is a level of acceptance for things, so that you accept that things are the way they are, and you stop working yourself up about stuff you cannot control. So I think that was kind of the key thing, the most important thing, the higher level of acceptance, but also personal insights. So by going back into your own life, you find things that have triggered you, or things that, when you can link stuff to, for example, for me, when an opposition player tackles one of my players really, really bad, I get very angry. I mean, unproportionately angry, because I feel like my player have been unjustly treated, right? And then I kind of, after meditation camp, I can see, oh, okay, I understand why, because I thought I was that when I was a kid, and I saw others being justly treated and stuff like that. So I can realize that my reaction is not because of the situation in front of me, but it's because what happened to me in the past, and that's why I react the way I do in this situation. So it gives you a higher level of self-awareness, which is crucial, especially if you're going to coach at a top level.
Old
Yeah.
player broken, new player come.
Yeah.
No, but that
become a
really
journey.
reminds me of a quote my grandfather always used to say to me. And he said that if you don't know where you come from, then how do you expect to know where you're going?
Yeah. Beautiful quote. Yeah.
Can you provide us with the link in case anybody really is inspired from what you're saying? Like, I mean, I know a guy and would like to try one of these camps.
Oh, definitely. Let's link it in the show notes.
Yeah, we'll do that.
Well, really interesting topic, and we'll try to go back to football now, but stay on with the challenge. And both you and I have been involved in women's football. You're in a top team, and I'm in a more relegation battle. So, what are the challenge of women's football? They're not connected to dollars. What immediate steps can then be taken to improve growth?
Well, I think at the end of the day, everything is connected to money. So you cannot kind of say that it has nothing to do with it, but it's indirectly connected to money. Whereas it seems like the focus today is the direct relationship with money. It's more the indirect relationship that's important. Because what is needed to get more money into women's football? Well, it's more attendance, more viewership, etc. Right? So you have one part of the problem is that, because you can say all you want, that you want as much pay as the guys, and obviously if you bring in the same amount of money, you should definitely have it. But it's from my experience in Linköping, it was a discussion that was not rooted in reality. So basically, the club being saying to sponsor that we should have the same amount as Norrköping, which is the men's team that has 10 to 15,000 people in the stands every week, and we had 1,000, if even that. So that's one discussion. I think the way to improve women's football in the long run is, as with everything, it's education, it's coach education, especially. And that's what I mean by it's indirectly linked to money. Because the reason that in general, I'm just generally speaking, obviously there's always exceptions, a lot of exceptions, and more coming. But in general, the level of coaching in women's football is worse than in men's football. And that is, at least a huge part of that is tied to the money, because if you get let's say $20,000 to coach a under 15 boys team, but you only get 10,000 to coach a under 15 girls team, which team will have the better coach? I mean, that question answers itself, right? So I think that is where the biggest problem is. There's probably also a couple of structural issues. I mean, I remember growing up and also seeing the best female players of my age group, especially. They came from having played with boys the first 10, 15 years of their lives. So I know there are some places where they are talking about this. I think Holland is one of them.
Yeah,
Netherlands.
Holland is one, not the Netherlands is one. I think they even decided that they have to until a certain age.
Yeah, and for me, it makes sense. I mean, why should you distinguish a 6-year-old, right? A 6-year-old is a 6-year-old, and then you can. It's better to tear them after the level of development than their gender.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think they did a study about that as well in the Netherlands, and it said like until age of 12, because mainly, to be honest, the biggest problem here is the like parents for the kids and then the boys, because they don't want the girls to interfere in their boys' education. But what you can see in research is that until the age of 12, before like physicality becomes a factor, both benefits from it.
Yeah.
So
pre-puberty, I don't see a reason to split them up. I mean, there might be one. I just don't see it.
In my career as a lean, mean box-to-box midfielder, and only my oldest friends won't laugh at that.
I was trying to stay serious, by the way, so I'll have my.
I laughed.
I don't mean chicken box to chicken box, guys. But I remember that we had this elite, kind of weekend game as you do going, and we had women players all the way until the age of 16, and it was a great experience. Always, it was such a fantastic challenge. They were really good players. We all benefited from it. It was really competitive. It was a heck of a way to preserve our passion for the game, or even to grow it. And I'm sure all of us benefited. I mean, not only the women, the men too. So I'm a huge advocate of it.
No, I think it's interesting. I think it's an interesting thought experiment as well, because I now remember when I played hockey, we had a girl playing on our team. Because now a picture appeared in my brain where she always changed in her own dressing room setup. And that wasn't a thing for us. We were like 13, 14, 15. We didn't care. That was just, okay. But I think when you look back, historically speaking, if we look at, let's say, Norway and Sweden, I think most national team players from the women's side came from small towns. So they came from environments where they played with boys. I think that has changed. But then the question is, has it changed because there now are many more girls playing football, which I hope. So therefore they have their own teams, or have it changed because they're not allowed to play with the boys anymore? So that's kind of an interesting thing. And what kind of leads to that? Would they have been better if they would have played more? It's an interesting thought experiment, but let's follow what they're doing in the Netherlands. I see like pre-puberty, definitely. Why should you split them up? Afterwards, I get the point, because it's it's biologically different. Don't listen to what everyone says, but men and women are actually biologically different. So there is an impact. Obviously,
well, that's the age as well when like testosterone starts to kick in, and through puberty and that as well. But as well, that's like going back to my own experiences from New Zealand. That happens quite often as well. You have many mixed teams, women and men's, well, girls and boys at that age. And also a lot of the time it happens that you move through age groups as well. So it's not just that, under sixes are under sixes. You might have an under eights team. I was 6 playing an under eights team. It's through about your growth and physicality as well, that you don't see like maybe a 5 foot 13-year-old kid against a 3 foot 13-year-old kid, and it's just in terms of the best way to develop players and through both genders is a big hot topic, and that we're still trying to search the right answer for, I guess.
Yeah, and what I think is like back to David's question. I think maybe the main problem is this. This is 4 dudes talking about how to improve women's football. Shouldn't be happening. Should be 4 women, or at least 3 women and maybe 1 dude because he's an expert at something. But why should we, say what thing? I mean, it doesn't make sense. And I think back to my experience at Linköping, I tried extremely hard to find a woman to be my assistant coach. There was none. I mean, literally, there was none. And I mean that for me really opened my eyes to what maybe the major problem is, and that's the amount of women coaches. I think that's probably the biggest thing that also can be influenced and can be fixed. And I know that the federations are having a lot of incentive programs to make that happen, but you also have to ask yourself, what more can we do? How can we bring more women into football?
Even into the men's game as well. Yeah. Into the men's game as well. Like a friend of mine, he went on trial to a 4th tier club in Germany that had a woman coach, but I've never experienced that over my whole time of playing football. And why not? Why not?
I totally agree, Jesse. I think it was a good answer from like the coach of Chelsea's women when she was asked about taking over a men's team. Then first of all, she said, "Why should I go to a Division 2 team?" But I realized when they asked that question, I think it was so weird. Nobody would ask a woman, "Why are you like an ex-CEO of a company?" Football is just another business. It doesn't matter. So if you have the knowledge, of course you can lead the players.
Yeah,
employees.
Great answer by Emma. She's a wonderful person and an amazing coach, and she could definitely be a coach at the top level in the men's game. Definitely. I mean, why shouldn't she? She has that. She has all the tools.
Yeah, just think about how easy it would be to enhance squad chemistry in a men's team with having an unusual right about that. You hire a women's coach, and just think about, how much of an impact on having everybody that's part of the project feeling they're part of something unique could have. It's a really interesting thought. I mean, for me, agree or disagree with this statement, please, Marcus. The men's game, comparing to the women's game, is more stagnant, conservative, hierarchical. The women's game is more direct, a little bit more merit-based, and more free-flowing and in a faster pace of development. Can women's football outpace men's football in development?
Why not? I mean, why not? I think you touched upon something that's important, and that's the what was the word you used? But about the men's game, that it's very, what's the word you used?
Jesus.
Stagnant, yeah, and very hierarchical, and it's. I mean, I think first of all, I think again, I don't even like talking about genders because I don't think it's actually pertinent to the discussion, because I do think that there's a lot of change that could be made in a positive way, regardless of it's women's football or it's men's football. I think you can do stuff in a different way. I think you can run clubs in a better way. I think you can treat people in a better way. I think you can bring back the meritocracy. What is it called? Meritocracy?
Meritocracy. Meritocracy.
This is me not being a native English speaker, then this happens something. You can bring that back into sport, because for me, that's the foundation of sport, right? You are measured based on your performance.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah. And that's what you should be based on. You shouldn't be based on anything else, what your background is or where you come from, or who your father was or who your mother was, or how long you've been there or whatever. You should be based on what you're doing. That's the basis for your evaluation. That's the way I think it should be.
And that's interesting, because we kind of touched on that subject a little bit yesterday. That's quite interesting about football as well, compared to, for example, if you're a sprinter and you're the fastest runner, you win the race. Whereas in football, it's such an opinion-based game that things like cultural things that happen in different countries do come into play sometimes, and it's a very weird but also interesting sport to be involved in because of that.
Well, I think you trace it back to the roots of the game, right? I mean, who started playing football? Well, I mean, it was the workers at the mill,
Yeah.
right? That was their leisure. So then inherently it is political, kind of, and you kind of see this in the U.S. now when sport is becoming more political. Soccer, obviously, one of the major drivers in that. And personally, I'm not a big fan of politicizing things in general, because I do think we can talk about ideas and solutions to problems instead of, getting into each of our camps and then yelling at each other. It doesn't seem to be very productive. But
No, we can't. I'm just kidding.
there is a historical kind of answer to your reflection, Jesse, and that's the starting point. I mean, you see certain teams are formed. The basis of the formation was a certain group of people, right? Of a certain, back in the day, class. Especially in Europe, you have different classes of people. People in the US tend to forget this, that Europe is actually a class society, right? So you didn't, depending on your class, you had different things you can do. That's not the same problem. In the US, it's a bit different problem, but that's the starting point, right? So that was where it come from. So I understand that football and soccer is politicized due to the history of it. I would wish that we would focus more on what we can do together to improve stuff, instead of focusing on who to blame, because that's not very productive.
Yeah.
So I've got a question from one of our viewers, which has to be one of us because it's not a live stream. What's the name of the monkey, Marcus?
Tony.
Tony. Okay. Thank you. Good answer. Well, whisper on the wind has it. I mean, there's a rumor in the press that you have a new club project in the pipeline. What's it like putting all the building blocks for a new professional club, Marcus? Tell us a little bit about it. We're really...
Yeah, well, it's to go back a little bit. It's my kind of dream come true situation, right? So, given all the different things I've done in football, I've, like you mentioned, I've amassed a lot of different perspectives and some knowledge in different areas, and through my coaching, I kind of realized that I spent more time doing things that improved the organization, that made me look good by improving my team, or making me win more games. So I focused on the wrong things, kind of. But I always left organizations, better off than when I came there, and that's always been a crucial thing for me. So reflecting on this, I thought, wouldn't it be nice to run a club one day, just to kind of show that it's possible to do it in a little bit different way. I'm not saying revolutionary stuff, but treating people better, and just having a, a more holistic plan. Let's put it like that. So that's one side of it. The coin. The other coin is that since I was a kid, I always dreamt about living in the U.S. And for reasons that. I think my kind of foundational values mirror the foundational values of that country well. So I always had those two dreams. So I thought, hey, why not start a club in the US? How hard can it be, right?
So it's so nice for an American to hear that somebody still remembers the original values of the United States. But
yeah, weird guy in the Swedish mountains, he remembers it. But yeah, so that was the original thinking, and it turns out that it's very hard to start your own club. But to answer your question, how it is, it's highs and lows, right? It's you have breakthroughs, and you work on the plan, the business plan, the financial stuff, all the stuff that you never did as a coach. So extremely rewarding, very, very difficult because it's been outside my comfort zone a lot, but also very rewarding because I learn new skills. And for every new challenge that I meet in this process, I have to go and learn stuff. So I took a course on contract law. So I took I need to read up on financial stuff, how you do budgeting, and blah blah blah, right? So all that good stuff. It's been ups and downs because I'm not the most patient guy. So, I mean, preferably I would have had this done already a couple years ago. The day after I walked into the USL office would have been the best day to start a club, kind of. Obviously, we had some COVID stuff in between that have kind of impacted the plan a bit, but we're in a good position now. So I'm looking forward to it.
This is a veiled criticism of a third party, but I've just been involved with the club project where their idea of starting up was spending money on absolutely every single imaginable category. You know, sports medicine department, 8 youth teams, this, that.
Yeah.
What would you prioritize for best effect in building a club?
Yeah. Now, so this is obviously for the last 2 years, I've given this some thought, and the answer will surprise you given my background in developing players, working with young kids, working with academies, and helping coaches all over the world. But I would prioritize getting butts in seats.
Mm.
Because if you don't have people watching, and doesn't have to be only on site obviously, but you need to become relevant, because if you're not relevant in your local market, then you don't have the leverage to do anything of the stuff that you really want to do. So you want to educate players, you want to develop your own players. That's great, because I think it's the right way to do it. But in order to be able to do that, you do need the top team or teams, because I think you should have both a men's and a women's team. The top teams need to be relevant. The club needs to be relevant. And obviously, you can do it in different ways, and you can have a relevant club without having a professional team on top. But in this context we're talking about, what's most important in a professional club. So I would say make sure that your club becomes relevant. And there are some clubs that do a really good job on this, and then they kind of screw up the rest. And like you say, Tony, they go the other way around. So they just throw money at things and hope that things should, solve themselves and make them relevant. Doesn't work. So you need to analyze your market. I think you need a stadium that's really good, and that's under your control, so you can control your income streams. And then you need great people and community engagement. I think those are the four things I probably stole from Peter Wilt. But when Peter sees this, Peter, thank you for our conversation. But I do think that is it. I mean, if you don't have that engagement, if you don't have that relevance, I mean, why are you there?
But that's basically the same then as basically every business, right? The customer, the
Correct.
people watching are your customers, and that's.
But the caveat, well, actually not, because as you see in modern business as well, you see this tribalism, right? So you see the modern brands now being much more focused, especially with the millennials, that you need to build that relationship with your. And in that sense, it is the same. The thing is that for us who live in or was grown up in Europe, we had that relationship with our local club from the day we were born, basically. That relationship was always there. That's not the case in the US and for a professional club. Same will be true if you start a new professional club in Scandinavia today. That will be difficult, because you would struggle to get that relevance and get that connection. But that's, like you say, Jesse, it's the same thing with business. You need to have that relationship with your customers, build loyal customer base, and then you're good.
And that comes through, for example, marketing throughout all the processes of the business or the football club.
I think it comes from what you do, right? So and who you are, kind of thing. In a sense, you can call it marketing, but I would say that it's about doing things the way you want to do them. So doing it in a good way. So if you treat people well, right? So if you treat people well, that is, in a way, it's marketing, because people.
I really see the contrast there. I mean, I thought your question was great, Jesse, and I think that there's something really striking about it, about what Marcus has said, and that's so many football clubs are not built for the fans. The fan income is a limited income. It has a limited overturn. It's finicky. Pandemics can hurt it. But so many football clubs are built for player sales. They're built for TV rights. They're built for these abstract business concepts. TV rights, okay, there's a fine line. I mean, TV rights are based on the fan viewer base, but
Yeah.
it's not tied to the local
It's
community.
Yeah.
this is why I think the US is interesting, because that's not the case in the US yet, at least. Because in the US, the soccer clubs are based on the attendance. That's it. I mean, I think 80% of your revenue is game day revenue. I think it's at least 80% is game day revenue. So it's like that's in that way. And if you go to Europe, I remember in London, for example, I mean, I think it's 20% of the revenue is game day revenue. The rest is sponsorship, et cetera, right? So
Definitely, I agree. I was going back to Europe and I was looking into the economy. I was talking about like women and men's football. We did a comparison, like how the salary compares to the income from attendance. What you can see in men in Sweden, at least, they're getting better at it. Like it's more. But when you look at the women's side, oh my God, then the salary should be way lower, and that's nothing you can put out there. But that's the reality. And also when you look into and then you can go through all the clubs, especially in Sweden and Europe, they're so focused. They get the salaries. Okay, we pay this amount of salary to all the players, and then we'll see. But if you look at the US and you look with the lockdowns and everything, you can even see like in NHL, which I follow, it's hurting them big because of the attendance is not there. So I think it's a great way to start, and I totally agree with that.
yeah, and that's why it's been challenging for me, for my brain, especially in the beginning, because like I mean, I'm European, so in my brain, player sales, that's half of the income, but nope.
But let me, to use a baseball term, I'm going to throw you a curveball. What does the American fan in your local community want to see?
I think they want to see something that is a part of them, or a mirror image of them. So it's something that they want to see, something that can channel their identity and their emotions through it. So and that's why I think it's how you kind of brand your club. It's not up to me to decide how the club will be. I mean, parts of it is, because parts of it is me, just the way I am. But the biggest thing is to get that community engagement and to become relevant. We need to be able to identify with the people who live in our city. So, and then that's when I looked at potential markets. Um, One of the things that I've been working on, or thought a lot about, was because the team I want to see on the field is a hard working group. Also because it's a Division 3 team, so you're not going to pay stars. So it will have to be a good collective. They will work hard together, and really show people that they work hard both on and off the field. So then when I look at the market, well, if I would put my team in, let's say, West Palm Beach, wouldn't fit the narrative of the community, right? But if I put it in a different city that has more of a, let's call it more of a, let's say, working class kind of demographic, more diverse demographic, then I think the way I would like my team to be can mirror the way that the citizens of this city would like their team to be. And then I think you have a good fit, because you need to take that into account. You cannot just go into city and run a team the way you would like it to be, and then think everything will be fine.
So we're going to move into the rapid fire questions section. So this is quick questions with quick answers. So we're going to start the rapid fire questions, starting with who was your favorite player growing up?
Well, let me start by saying I hate these type of questions, because
Thank you, appreciate it.
We've done our job then.
no, but I want to answer them because it's a good challenge for me. But it's so unlike me to put someone else ahead of someone else. If you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you look, except Wayne Gretzky, besides that, maybe. Obviously, you have the New York Rangers '94 winning Stanley Cup team, but that's a different story. Lifelong Rangers fan, by the way. But except that, it's difficult. But my favorite player when I was growing up, I did a quick search in my memory back, and being goalkeeper, I saw Taffarel. That was the one that popped up. Later, as an inspiration, Canizares. So I don't know. I even dyed my hair blonde for a while, so that was kind of Cyrus thing.
That was a short answer from Marcus Walfridson, ladies and gentlemen.
The best manager you've played for?
Oh, I struggle with this one. I came down to Pascal Simpson, former player, and the reason, because he's not the tactical, wasn't the tactically best coach or whatever, but he is the best one who made me feel like I was, the best person in the world. He had this skill of, and this is something I try to learn from a mirror, that when you sat and had a conversation with him, it felt like you were the only thing that mattered in his life. And I think having that type of ability as a leader, I think that's something to strive for.
The best player you've played with?
I play with so many great players, but truly some really good players. I think the one that on top of my brain made it to the highest level, I think, is a guy named Jens Skogmo in Norway. Played right back in Start, was a follow Start. And funny thing I remember by him was that on the field we had a great connection, like really good, but we didn't like each other. But we worked really good together on the field, but weren't best friends off the field, which also taught me something when going into coaching.
Yeah, this is where you have to do the. If he's watching, right?
So there's nothing, but personality-wise, and always some women in the picture, so all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
How about the best player that you've coached?
It's truly difficult. Obviously, coach some really good players, young players, especially. I mean, national team players that have grown up to be national team players. You have one year's transfer to Elfsborg, Tobias Heinz. But I would say the whole Mjøndalen squad, obviously, being on the top level, being able to coach them, really fun. Some good players there, even American, Eric Hurtado. He was there a little bit. Great player at running fast straight. So I had to try to ask him a little bit about his positioning, but it worked out well. And obviously women's side, Aslani, obviously Linköping. But I would say that in terms of the player with the best skill, combined with the potential, combined with the willingness to learn, I would say Maria Banusic.
Do you have a memory? Do you have a best goal that you've scored or favorite goal that you've scored?
Do I have a memory of a goal I've scored? That's the question.
Or by proxy, Marcus, if you want.
Oh yeah, then it was beautiful strike. Top corner from my own goal.
It happened last night in bed, eh?
Perfect.
Football Manager also is included, so.
FIFA also. I didn't score many goals, but I have scored some penalties, and I missed some penalties. I remember the ones I missed more, but.
You mentioned you're going to have your favorite lunch. What is your favorite meal?
Ribeye with béarnaise.
Ooh.
Béarnaise. Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
Very good choice.
That was a simple question.
Your favorite movie?
This is also a good one. Office Space.
Oh.
Interesting.
Yeah. You can probably do a psychoanalysis on me just by taking that movie as a starting point.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go rewatch it this weekend.
It's a great movie.
Who's your favorite international player?
Again, me and favorite players. I was like, what do you mean with international player? But Swedish, I want to get Zlatan in here somewhere, so I need to get him in here. And honestly, I'm so impressed by him in so many different levels, from being a marketing genius to obviously still playing at my age, because we're the same age, I think. So it's that in itself is impressive.
If you could change your nationality in soccer, would you? And what would it be?
I would change it to US, so my immigration will go much.
Great answer.
Lawyer's like 18 grand or something.
Great answer.
Jesus Christ! I'm thinking I'm flying to Mexico and walking over.
And if you could coach in any other sport, what sport would it be in?
Well, I've actually coached floorball, but no one knows what that sport is. Probably
Not in the English-speaking world, no.
No. Plastic sticks on the floor. But no, I would love to coach hockey, and I think I would. Obviously, this is humble speech, and David, you would also think this. I think I would be a great hockey coach. Don't you think?
It seems so easy.
Yeah. I mean, get the puck on the net. You know, I remember in the I think it was a quarterfinals in the '94 Stanley Cup. I remember they interviewed Esa Tikkanen on American TV, and Esa wasn't good at English, and they asked Esa, so Esa, you're down with 1 goal and then go into second period. What do you have to do? Well, we have to get the puck down and work the puck down.
Simple.
Well, but I agree. I remember when I played hockey as well. Like putting the puck down to the corner and the coach, really great, David. Just put it down the corner, and then next guy can take it. I was like, this is easy to coach.
I never understood that, because for me, when I played, I couldn't realize, why should we get the puck further away from the goal when we're supposed to put it in the goal? But I do understand the thing, throw it at the net, which I always love, because always when teams are struggling, what do we need to do? We need to throw it at the net. Well, that's where you score goals, so why not?
No, I agree. I started playing hockey quite late, so I was like pretty bad in skating. So I just stand in front of the goal, get all the rebounds and stuff like that.
I stood there like this.
I was a third-string hockey goalkeeper to stay fit.
Thank you for sharing, Tony.
In New Zealand, in New Zealand, hockey's the field hockey, you know, that they play in England.
Oh yeah.
My business partner in the club in Florida, by the way, he played field hockey. So, and I was like, what do you mean? What is that?
And it has more participants in the world, by the way, not to make you guys angry.
Really strange.
Should do a follow-up episode on just hockey.
Yeah.
Different kinds of hockey.
Yeah.
But leading on from that, then, if you weren't involved in football, what do you think you would have ended up doing?
I would have ended up running my own business and trying to make the world a better place. I'm still trying to make the world a better place, but now it's through football.
Lovely. Well, that's the end of the rapid fire questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jesse.
More curveballs at you, Marcus.
Ooh,
So what failure or apparent failure set you up for later success? Any time that you fell on your face only to find a new way to stand, type of thing. Do you have a favorite failure of yours that you can tell us about?
Well, I fail every day, so that's a favorite thing. But it's a long list. It feels like. I think the thing that impacted me the most was my burnout, especially the one in Linköping, and successfully getting fired, which was a relief, by the way. I already decided to quit before that happened, but I would say that burning out is a apparent failure. I think that's the way it's looked at in general. So that's why I talk about it a lot, because I wish to make especially coaches aware that working 6 days a week or 7 days a week, 11 months a year, 12 hours a day, it's not a very sustainable lifestyle. I mean, you might be the one who's able to make it happen, but risk is you're not. So for me, that really opened my eyes into becoming more efficient, into making sure that I actually do the things that are most important now and not all the other stuff. So I would say that the apparent failure that I kind of like the most now, looking back, because it's not a fun thing to go through, was burning out. But you don't want to go through it, because it's going to take you a couple of years to get back. And I mean, I went from watching football, soccer every day to not wanting to see a game. I didn't see a game I think it took me 1.5 years at least,
Mhm.
because I was so sick of it through the burnout.
I remember that was the first point I had contact with you at that point. I remember that right after that happened, splitting with Linköping, I was calling you every week. You were in a different country.
Yeah.
You just went on this travel, incredible travel, and I mean, it's symbolic of your quest that you embarked on from that moment. So it wasn't like your burnout lasted long either.
I think that travel really helped me because it, first of all, I did something with the altitude and planes and stuff like that, that really gets my brain going. So I like myself in tall buildings and in airplanes, and I'm scared of heights, by the way. So there's no logic behind it, but it really fuels my thinking, my reflection ability, and I think when you are in that situation and you burn out, that changing your environment, and I think you see this also in scientific papers, that changing your environment is actually one of the first things you should do in order to kind of leave, because you physically leave your problems behind, which is a helpful thing. It sounds kind of silly, but it's actually helpful. And I think that those travels really sped up my process, and I think it would have taken even longer if I hadn't done that.
Yeah, for those of us with a fear of heights, Bolivia, Ecuador, Nepal accepted, soccer is a very good sport.
Yeah. Hey, by the way, Nepal is a Swedish national team coach, I think, right?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. I had a player who'd never played at zero altitude, coming from like 2,000 meters altitude once, and he had a hard time adapting down. I've never
Yeah.
saw.
Well, getting back to coaching, you spoke a little bit earlier about it when you had your injury and you wanted to try to learn as much as possible. But if you go deeper into that, when did your interest in coaching begin, and what did that look like, more specific?
Well, if we, my first coaching opportunity was in that obscure sport that we call floorball, or that some people call floorball. We call it innebandy. So I coached a women's team when I was 18 years old in floorball. And I think I've always been interested in how groups work and how kind of people behave, especially in groups. And I always said that the biggest challenge is to make a group of people work together towards a common goal, which is kind of what a coach is supposed to do. So I think that interest started when I was very young. I think it comes from my father building his own company and leading that to some success. So I think that kind of is the starting point of my coaching interest. And then when I kind of reflect on my travels, especially after the Linköping thing we just talked about, I think one of the reflections came is that I mentioned before, I always wanted to work in football. I always want to coach or to be a leader of groups. But then I kind of tied it all together and said, well, maybe it's actually I want to be there and be the leader of the organization instead of being just the team. Yeah, it's been from my childhood. It's the short answer.
Marcus is an expert in short answers for the audience at home. So.
But it's more fun to talk.
Yeah.
You have to be gentle to him, Tony, so you don't turn off the interview here. It's the second time you're going at him.
I'm very good at being gentle.
You're just...
Yeah. Right. No. Tell me like this yesterday. Crowded crashed. Anyways, yeah, you worked with some very influential football personalities. You've had contact with them. You're friends with a couple more. Anybody else that has given you a fragment of knowledge or a good piece of advice that is not your own, but that you've adapted, that you can think of?
I think probably everything that comes out of my mouth comes from someone else.
Yeah.
Because it's all inspiration. Maybe I've connected some dots here and there, but I think the base of my knowledge comes from other people. I think that I've been lucky enough to have had some really good football people in my life. I think that's influential into why I stayed in football, why I also was able to get to the level I was able to get at. Because if I wouldn't have had, let's say, like Mike Spite, who brought me to Norway, Per-Mathias Högmo, who lived in the same city. You had multiple coaches living in that area, and that were very open and friendly, and let me come and visit and all stuff. If that wouldn't have happened, obviously, my level of knowledge in the game would have been a lot less, and also I might have ended up doing something else. Who knows? So I'm grateful for everyone that have been a part of this journey. And there's always been positive influences and been negative influences, but you learn from those as well. I think one of the reasons I used to say, one of the reasons why I want to be a coach was because I had so many bad coaches. And it's not to kind of talk down on someone, but it's just there was always, everyone was good at something, but it's always you see either they treat people very poorly, or they're not tactically very astute, or it was always something, right? So I'm grateful for all the influences.
And how different is coaching in the United States from Sweden? How would you compare that to continental Europe, where you've done lots of in-depth study?
Well, I think that the difference is the culture. In all of these places, it's the culture. There's a cultural difference in coaching between Sweden and Norway, which is neighbors and tiny nations. So I think saying that, or asking the question, what's the difference between coaching in Sweden and the US, for example? That's like asking what's the difference of coaching in Sweden and Asia. It's the same relative question, because the US is pretty big. Obviously, Asia is even bigger, maybe, but there's a huge cultural difference within the US, which is my point, that as there are differences between Sweden and Norway, there are differences between the Netherlands and Spain and Italy, and and there's difference between the Northeast, and there's the Southeast and the West. I mean, there's so many differences. So the culture is again the short answer, and then obviously what's in the culture, that's where it kind of gets interesting, I think.
You have any anecdotes?
Sorry?
Do you have any anecdotes?
Well, I mean, the few times that I've been on the field coaching US players, I've always been impressed by which is, I think, a cultural foundation to the country. You work really hard, right? You give your all, because that's what you're told to do before you were born. So from the moment you're born, it's about hard work. Your parents work 2 jobs to support you, and that's just normal. Whereas in Scandinavia, for example, in general, that is something you have to teach players. You have to teach players to give their best. So in Norway and in Sweden, you have to teach players that when you go on the field, it's 100%. That is not something that is natural for them, because that is not how the cultural foundation of these countries are. Because you don't have to. You can cruise at 60%, and you can still end up having a decent job, a good family, live in a nice house. So, but you can't do that in the US. So that's the kind of one anecdote that is, I think, it paints one picture at least. And then you have the different aspects in terms of tactical knowledge, etc., which is the polar opposite.
I was thinking about, like, now you've been in Sweden, Norway, and US, but you have your philosophies, your systems, ideas. But how would you implement them in a team that doesn't speak English?
By sign language. No, the game is the same. So the characteristics of the game is the same wherever you go. The rules are more or less the same. Slight differences, but more or less it's the same. So that kind of gives you the starting point or the philosophy. And then you have your team, which will be different human beings in the different spots. So you will have to take them as a starting point and add them to your thoughts about how the game is played. And then you implement that through your training process. And obviously it's going to be a better challenge if you don't speak the language. But then you just play and you move players around. That's what I would do.
Tony, do you have any input? I know you've been like a translator on the pitch as well.
Direct translation doesn't work when you add the cultural filter. But at the same time, for me, the wonderful thing about football has been that it's an international game. It's the same sport in Tier 3 West Bengal and Tier 1 Oregon.
Yeah.
And that's what I absolutely love about it.
And I think I joked a little bit when I said sign language, but in a way, I'm kind of serious because if you're on the pitch, you have your context, and within the context, and you are pointing, and you can do this, or you can do different signs, you know, that are non-verbal communication that players will understand. I think you can actually implement your playing style and or the way you wanna operate your team. I think you actually can do that because you have the context. And I've tried a couple of times with. I remember a training session with French players. I don't speak French, and we had this exercise, and it was like 3 passes and then a forward pass, and then go 2 against 1 or something. It was some kind of stupid exercise. But I remember I was like, I used the words I did know in French. So it was like 1, 2, 3, ballon. And, if the ball and the point, it worked perfectly. That was beautiful.
Yeah, and then even things about like the tone of your voice as well, that they can always tell when you're angry or happy with them from the tone of your voice.
And I remember this, remember the Swedish referee Anders Frisk?
Yeah.
I remember reading this interview, and they asked him, hey, when you referee a Italian team and a German team or whatever, what language do you speak? And he said, Swedish. Because the Swedish words, along with his gestures, makes everyone understand what it is. And I tried this. I did this when I was like 20, maybe. I refereed a little bit up north, and there was this tournament. There was a Spanish team there. And, I understood a couple of Spanish words like tarjeta and stuff like that. So I heard someone, so it was probably foul. I gave an advantage, and I heard tarjeta, tarjeta. And I was like, in Swedish, said that, no, that's no card. And then I ran away. And at the end of the game, one of the players came. They were losing like 4-0. The Spanish, it was a girls' team, Spanish girls' team. And she came to me, and she said something like, blah, 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 basically how it sounded to me. And I figured that due to context, they were losing. It was the end of the game. She's asking me how much time is left. So I did this, put my wrist up, looked at my watch, and I showed her 2. And I said, in Swedish, it's 2 minutes left. And she was like, okay. So,
unbelievable.
Oh. But it's a great story. But I think it was like Frank Lampard or John Terry who told like similar about like Carlo Ancelotti. Like when they play bad in the first half, like what did Carlo said? I have no idea. You're screaming in Italian, but we know what we have to do.
Yeah. And there's this one hands gesture, which is this one.
Yeah.
Which every coach does, and every sportscaster puts a completely different interpretation on it. And it always means the same. It means move the ball around, right? Or retain possession.
Well, yeah, that's the same as well about, I've played football in a lot of different countries as well. So obviously, you do pick up football words quite quickly because you're exposed to it on a regular and daily basis. But if I speak English and I'm pointing, there is a football communication there as well. It's a common language. Football is a common language.
No, definitely.
This is a kids-friendly channel, Jesse, so don't give us examples.
Well, which languages?
Flipping the coin quickly, but it's an interesting question to ask you. How important is diversity in the game of football?
How important is it in life? I mean, for me, I keep coming back to it that, I don't care where you're from. I don't care how you look. I don't care what your gender is. For me, that's irrelevant. The only thing that's important for me is that you know what you're talking about, and that you kind of have the goods. You can deliver the goods. Everything else should be, shouldn't even be in the line of thinking. It's unnatural, I think, to actually take other stuff into consideration. That being said, diversity of thought, I think, is a relatively important thing. and relatively because it depends on your position and your role and what your objective is. In theory, having a lot of people with different, diverse thinking crowd, is a very good thing, right? Because you could get, perspectives that you had no clue about, right? So you can get a lot of different angles. However, and this is something I discussed with a high performance director in the NBA, that he put together a team of, top physicians and doctors and, scientific people, and they had a very diverse background. But what he found was that he had to spend a lot of time, basically brokering deals between these people because they were arguing all the time. So diversity of thought is a very good concept, and I think it's important to an extent. But I think you also have to know where to kind of draw the line. How outside the box, how far outside the box do you want your staff to go? How, let's say, how what's the best way of phrasing this? But the important thing is, at the end of the day, you're working with something, a group or an organization that's supposed to perform at the highest possible level. So how can you get that group to perform at the highest possible level? Well, some of it is diversity of thought, right? So you need different inputs in order to find the best possible ways of making this happen. But if you only have diversity of thought, meaning that you have no consensus at all, well, then how do you, where do you go, right? The risk is you end up just running around different loops. So, and not getting anywhere. So I would say you need it, diversity of thought. I think you having people from different backgrounds, different ideas, different experiences, I think that's crucial. I think you as the leader, as the head coach, you need to have people around you that make you a little bit uncomfortable, that come from different backgrounds. Because if you only surround yourself with people that look like you, have the same background as you, think more or less the same way, then you could, don't hire them. Then it's like hiring yourself 3 times over, right? So you do need the diversity, because I think a lot of ingenuity, a lot of discovery, a lot of innovation comes from the clashing of thoughts. But so that's a caveat then. So you need diversity of thought, you need that, but you also need a very strong reference in order to make sure that it's actually allowed to have, or you need a kind of almost a protocol for how to communicate with each other, right? Because if you have different people with different ideas and thoughts, instead of getting into entrenched positions, you need some kind of reference to move everything forward. So you need the common goal, you need that the clear mission statement, right? You need those things to make sure that you're on the right path, you're on the same path. And then it's okay to think differently. It's okay to, have different opinions about it. But at the end of the day, this is us. We are, this group is we. I think that's the key. And as long as you can have that, be as diverse as possible.
So the old school coach dictator isn't gone.
Well, if you look around you, you know the answer. I think there are times where you do need that dictatorship, as you call it, and on all types of different levels of the leadership scale. When you are at a crisis, who do people cling to? Well, they cling to the guy who's pointing with his whole hand and the arm is straight out, and this is the way we're going to go. That's not time for commission discussion. And I think in general, you can't lead a club by commission. It's not possible. You need responsibility. You need accountability, because if no one's accountable, then eventually at the end of the day, you have nothing.
Then going on from that, then you've worked in multiple different areas of football. Do you hear any bad recommendations that come up frequently throughout different areas of the game? And if anything comes to mind, what are they?
There's lots. Work hard, right? That's a horrible recommendation. Work smart instead. Be the smartest guy. Don't be the guy who's punching in the earliest and punches out the latest, because that doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is at the end of the day if you're winning games or developing players. Um, I think what's funny with kind of coach education is that you have one game. It's played around the world. You have the same rules more or less, but you have vastly different coach education programs, and you always, and this is what something that kind of personally kind of bugs me a little bit is the importance within soccer, especially to or it might be a social, I mean, construct, I don't know, but at least I recognize it mostly within soccer is that whatever you say is always referenced towards who you are. So if you're the guy who won 5 World Cups, no one's done that, by the way, but of coaches at least, or players. But if you're that guy, then I'll take everything of what you're saying as a truth and as a holy grail, and this is the way it's going to be done. So I think that is maybe the worst. In a way, that's the worst recommendation. Recommendations from that's based on who the person is instead of what the person is actually saying.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense, but I do think I think it's society in
Completely.
general. We have that challenge that it's more important who you are than what you say, and I think for me that's just totally wrong because it's what you say and what you do that's the most important thing. Who you are is just who you are. I mean we can accept that. I mean, great for you that you won 2 league titles or whatever. You might have been lucky twice, but we don't know. But I mean, great for you. But what you're saying is the important stuff.
Yeah. We call this part the rounder. It's the general questions, that we want to know from all the different personalities that we will be interviewing. Define success, Marcus.
I didn't hear you, Tony. What did you say?
Define success.
The success is individual. So success for me will be something different than for all of you. And for me, it's reaching my life goals or vision, if you will. So for me, I've set a couple of goals, a couple of visions that I want to achieve. In terms of my family life, wanting to live in the U.S., having a great family, healthy family, being able to help people, being financially stable and all that good stuff. So I have a couple of I've done a thorough process to kind of figure out what is that I want in different areas of my life. So success for me is achieving those, I would say. And then I think it's a difficult question, man. It's because what happens then? So what happens when you have the family and the kids and the money in the bank and all that good stuff? So can I change my answer because now I feel like success is more like about the journey. So for some reason this has comes to me now, but it's I think for me the success is living the journey and ticking off stuff. So I do think accomplishing things is important on that journey, but it feels like it's all like it's train stations on the long track, right? So it's a track that runs off to eternity. And you have different stations on the route that you kind of want to stop at, and you want to look at different things, and you have some different scenery. But at the end of the day, just staying on the track and keep moving forward. I think that is, for me, true success.
Money. Question about money. $100 or less that you spent that made a positive impact on your life in the last 6 months.
This cap.
Less than $100 looks more.
Yeah, it should be more.
That was the short answer.
Yeah. Okay. Let's. Yeah. All right. Move on.
Waiting these timer as well. Yeah. I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. Nope. No. Well, okay. I bought a book, 2 books actually. I actually bought more, but
$100, $100.
yeah, exactly. So I bought two books. One which have made both of them have made already a huge impact. One is How Innovation Works by Matt Ridley. Definitely recommend that. It's relatively easy read and puts things in perspective on how innovation in different sectors, so like transportation, health, education, all that stuff.
We're gonna link it below.
Yep. So that was a good investment. Second book is David Deutsch, Beginning of Infinity. So that's also something we can link to, and I haven't processed that yet. So I've read it. I'm not quite done with it yet, and I need to read it once more. So a little bit tougher read, but philosophically speaking, really good. Talks a lot about science being good explanations and bad explanations.
Well,
That's in football that's difficult, by the way. Like good explanations football, we talk about it being very subjective, but a good explanation of why the game went the way it went, right, versus a bad explanation. It's I don't know, just sorry, Dave.
One that fits the personalities, like you said earlier, Tang. I mean, that's true. The explanation has to fit the personalities. Different people will understand different things differently.
Yeah, different perspectives.
I agree, and I always remember when you had a coach and a football pitch, whatever. They always said "good thought," and I was like, "What is good thought? What do you mean with good thought?"
It's fascinating, right? Because sometimes I think from my own perspective, oh, that was a good thought. So I thought correctly, but my execution was horrible because I did the wrong thing, right? So my intention was good, but my execution was horrible. But yeah, it's like, how can you know what a person is thinking?
Exactly.
Because that's just what do you call it when you apply your own thinking to someone else. Yeah, the word eludes me, but anyway.
Implementation.
Well, if you want to get the word out there, you have this gigantic billboard. What's the message you will send out? What would it say?
I think it would say, the path is smooth. Why do you throw rocks in front of you?
Well,
not my words. It's some quote from a book I read, obviously, but and it's attributed to no one, especially some ancient wisdom kind of thing. But for me, that really resonates because I think we create a lot of problems for ourselves, and I think that's what that quote symbolizes. That we make things out to be a lot harder than they are. I think that the moment when you rid yourself of the constraints of your own thinking, or at least most of it, you will see really cool things happening. All of a sudden you get a crazy idea of starting a club in the US, for example, or so that's a challenge, I think, and I think we see that. Definitely something that helped, by the way, on the meditation camp. You see that more afterwards. The constraints that most people put on their own thinking, and they limit themselves so much that it's a pain to watch, to be honest.
yeah, it's like comment section in social media.
That's a good place to be in for experiencing that. Yeah.
Going back to money, perhaps not a little more than $100 this time, but or less. But what is one of the best or most worthwhile investment you ever made? And it could also be not money, like energy, time, and so on.
The meditation camp. It's free. But it pays forever, kind of thing. So yeah, I think that's the one. And I think any big project you undertake, right? So deciding that I want to be a great coach, because that led me on a path. Deciding that I'm going to start a club in the US because that's leading me on a path. And I don't know if you never know if it's going to happen. I think it will, but something else might pop up along the way that makes your life take a different turn, right? So making those huge decisions, setting those big, hairy, audacious goals, as Jim Collins would have said. I think those are, meditation camp and bag, big, hairy, audacious goals.
In the last 5 years, what have you become better at saying no to? What new realizations and or approaches helped, or any other tips for time management?
This.
Ooh.
So I have a message from you, Tony, by the way. But yeah, this, turning off all the notifications, turning off, there's no red dots here, so that stuff, inspired by Tim Ferriss. So limiting the input, I think that's the key thing. Also part of the meditation stuff, right? So it focuses your thinking much more. So I think that's the biggest efficiency hack that I could put out there. Meditation and limiting distractions as much as possible. Also, do not watch. I don't have a TV, which I sometimes I regret because I want to watch the game on the big screen sometimes. But it keeps me focused on what I'm doing instead of just. I can't remember the last time I laid on the couch, right, and watched a game or watched TV. That's probably 5 years ago, or at least 4.
Well, that kind of leads on to the next question. When you are feeling unfocused or you've lost your focus for a short period of time, what's something that helps bring you back into that focus?
Lying on the couch and watching TV. No, but it's different strategies, I think. Sometimes, you have these days when you're like, it's nothing feels like it's fun today, So what do? Well, if possible, go outside, go for a walk. If you can walk in nature, that helps to inspire, because usually it's about rearranging thinking. Also, sometimes I say, okay, let's take half an hour or 40 minutes or an hour to watch something to inspire myself. So that could be a YouTube video. It could be an episode of Hard Knocks, for example, one of my favorite shows. It could be watching a game or half a game or whatever to kind of get me. Usually for me, what I recognize is that when I have these moments, it's because I've been working a little bit too much. So what I need is just time to relax in different ways, and that could be what you said, or if the weather would be better or warmer, I would go play golf. That's obviously a nice one. We just spend time with my girlfriend or with someone else, go for coffee or something. So, and I think tying this into the last 5 years question, I will say that the biggest difference for me is that I now kind of, I blame myself less for having these stints of, let's call it not feeling motivated, or that kind of low energy moments, or low motivation moments. So because in the past I blamed myself, I thought I have to do this, or you're not going to be able to go where you want to go, and that was not a smart strategy. So I kind of learned that, and now I just accept it. So okay, today I don't feel like doing much. Okay, so what can I actually do? Is there something among obviously the benefit of being kind of involved in many different projects that I can kind of pick and choose. So even if I plan that today would be working on the efficient coach, for example, but then when I sit down to do stuff, it would be more fun to explore a possible investor for a club, or help Tony find a player or something, and that kind of being a little bit more relaxed about it, accepting it, and then you say, okay, is there something that I would like to do that actually also fits on the path? And if not, just take the time.
And did you learn that maybe through also meditation as well, through, letting thoughts come into your mind and then letting them go, and to kind of keep be fully aware and be fully conscious of what you're doing, and just to let problems that are what you said, not the end of the world or something that you can't control, get in your way and cloud your mind.
I think the most important when you have those thoughts, just there they are. So I'm thinking that I'm not good enough, for example. Well, wait a minute. Is that actually true? Is that objectively true? Is it subjective? Is it? Can I change it? What can I do to not think like this again? So I think because when you have the thought and it goes away, odds are it comes back, right? So it's not only about accepting the thought; it's about accepting what the thought means, so that you can kind of work with that, and it gives you kind of clues to what you can do in to improve yourself or program your brain in a different way. So you can say next time, I'm not going to eat that because that could have made me feel like this. So next time in this situation, maybe stay off that sugar or whatever, right? Those kind of things.
It's
Well,
strange.
that's exactly it, about being conscious about what you're doing, about being in the present moment, and then learning from that as well.
Yeah.
It's strange how many people you meet that you would consider the best in a grouping, and they're the ones who constantly beat themselves up.
Yeah.
Actually.
Isn't that what part of the, what do you call it, big 5 personality traits?
Yeah.
I think so. And it's, it's that constant feeling of not feeling good enough. Sometimes I wish, I can just, sit at TV and stare at it and, be happy with life. If you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
We're to finalize, I'm going to ask you to just introduce your book to us, and also we're going to link your book in the podcast down below at the end.
Mm.
But I have the final questions that we asking everybody. So, Marcus, what makes difference between levels in a profession, in any profession, and maybe football more specifically?
I wish I could say competence, but I can't. I mean, that depends on, I guess, how you interpret the question. So now I'm interpreting it as what's the difference to make it to a different level, right? So to work on a different level. I don't know if that's the way you intended it, but if that's the case, then I would say it's part. Hopefully, it's part of competence is part of it, but unfortunately, I think it's more about network and your personality and luck. And it's funny because I give advice sometimes to coaches that I work with in terms, before a interview, for example, if you have a job interview, and everyone thinks, I have to do this huge presentation about the playing style and et cetera, the coaching methodology and, the pedagogy we're going to use. And then I tell them, well, you are pitching to people who have no clue what you're talking about. So because the board members, they don't know anything about what you're talking about, maybe a little bit somewhere. So some of them might be able to ask a question, but what you should do is pitch yourself. You should make them like you, and you should make them trust you, and you should make them believe that you are a great leader.
The question that every scout hates: what's this player's level?
Yep.
How do you tell? How do you tell a player's level? How do you tell any professional's level?
I don't think you can. But not from outside. I think just visually observing someone is a poor I mean, it is the basis maybe you have, so it's constraints in the business, but you would like to peek inside the brain, right? Or at least look at the character of the player. What is this player? Because, and this is when I think you see this much more now in especially top major league sports, that I have a friend who works as a well, part of what they do is they help NBA teams do personality tests on possible draft subjects. So they sit down with them and they do a personality test, so they get some information, and they have conversations, etc. So you at least have a little bit more information, right? And then you can say what you want about personnel test because that's flawed as well, but it's at least it gives you a pointer, some direction about who this player is, because they're getting to the point at least, which I think is great, that to realize that since it's a team sport, it might be a good idea if the players on the team actually also can work together, because that's kind of what it's about. And you see this, I think, in football, you see this when players looking good in one club goes to another club and look like crap, right? So it's more to it. But if that's the tool you have and you're supposed to judge it, I mean, give it your best guess. I mean, this is what life is about. And I kind of recognize this, that, in most occupations, people don't really know what they're doing. I mean, they're giving their best, and they're doing all they can, and it's a good guess, but no one knows. So I would answer that question the same way. I mean, you decide what level it is. You might be right, you might be wrong, but at least you made a guess. If you can structure that guess by using some kind of let's say rules or something for yourself. So you say that I base my valuation on this, this, and this, and hopefully those are relatively objective things. Then at least you can follow a system, and then you can go back and you can look at it and say, nah, my guesses were, I was 20% right. I want to improve it to 50 at least. So maybe I have to change this variable in my system. So employ some sort of system. I would say that's the best way in getting anywhere in the world. Employ a system for your health, for your energy levels, for your career, for your scouting, for your coaching, and because then you have something to fall back at. And if you're gonna fail, it's better to fail with a plan, so you know what you actually can change to succeed, instead of failing with no plan, because then you just have no.
Good. I like the answer. What is game insight to you? Game insight to you? I'll rephrase that, Marcus. What is game insight to you?
It's about good decision making. So it's about making good decisions, I would say. And I mean, for our conversations, it's also company. But for our conversations, it's also making good decisions in the game of soccer.
Yeah. And all that goes into it.
Yep.
Tell us about your book. You've got a book on Amazon that costs a whopping 99 cents.
Yeah, it's going to make me rich, man.
Richer.
Richard. Who's Richard? Over. It's the book is called Improving Coaching Actions. Yeah. It's actually my second ebook. It's a short read. Hopefully it's a simple read. The whole idea behind it is to look at the part of your, what I call kind of, the coaching efficiency cycle, I kind of call it. So it consists of four things, because before you coach, you prioritize, you prepare, you execute your coaching, and then you evaluate, hopefully. If you employ those four things, you will become a more efficient coach or leader or whatever, because you have bigger chance of success. That's the system. And this is focused on the execution part. So this talks a lot about, when you coach a player, how can you improve the outcome of that action, that coaching action. And it's kind of, the idea here is that because we've spoken about this on this podcast, that I'm stepping outside coaching, and this is my way of kind of giving back to the coaching community. What I want to do is I want to write a full-length book on the topic of efficient coaching, and this will be a part of it. But I thought, let's take this out because I think it's very important. I think it's something that can help coaches. And it's based on stories. It's based on stories, experience I had with clients, also from my own career, as we've spoken about, and walks you through how you can become even more efficient when you coach. And when I say efficient, I mean how you can coach better and spend less time doing it.
Fantastic. And you have a podcast if readers want longer answers to things?
Not yet. I'm gonna launch a long answer podcast in slow motion for those who want the 2 hour sleep pill. No, I started the Efficient Coach podcast last year. I handed over the reins to Ben Johnstone, who's now the host, who's doing a great job of interviewing people. And I've been on there and talked a little bit about the book and becoming more efficient. But we're kind of evolving that and bringing more cool guests on and trying to keep it short. So that's why I wasn't the best host.
Thank you. We're going to link everything below. And I don't know, Marcus, it's been really inspirational and a pleasure to talk to you. I mean, we started off with naming your 18 different hats that you've worn besides the efficient coach one. But at the same time, it all comes down to a core person that is capable of wearing 18 different hats efficiently. And I think it was really enlightening. And I'm really looking forward to see your very soon to materialize projects materialize, because I'm very optimistic about them. And those that know me will know that I'm not such an optimistic guy about future projects. So, thank you very much for having us on and being a part of this new initiative and helping us make it better.
Yes, I think it was enjoyable. Obviously, you got me talking because I never talk so much. So thank you for that. Thank you for allowing me to talk. And Jesse, when you edit this, hopefully I can talk a little bit less.
Every other word, Jesse.
I'll extend it even longer.
Let's experiment with cutting out all the verbs.
Thank you, guys. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
No, thank you, Marcus. Really learned a lot.
Thank you.
Here you go.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Ciao.